this is Deirdre Verbo, your host of Let's Talk Seniors, Memory Care Issues, Dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. We have a very special guest today. She has a lot of initials after her name. We have Miss Liz Cornish. She is the owner of New Season in Life. She's been doing that full-time for 5 years. It's a company that specializes in providing information to and guiding seniors and their families through the maze of senior living options: independent living, assisted living, memory care, nursing homes, all throughout Connecticut. Her vision is every senior should be living their best life. Her passion for helping seniors stems from more than 35 years experience as a physical therapist. And Liz has extensive experience and knowledge in the area of resources, which makes her an invaluable asset for seniors and their families looking for guidance. She understands the numerous and varied challenges that arise with seniors during the aging process. So she's not only a certified senior advisor, certified dementia practitioner, certified dementia care specialist, as well as a certified rehabilitative Tai Chi instructor, which I found out that is like low impact Tai Chi, which is pretty cool. She's an active member of the Chamber of Commerce and a member of the Health Council. She believes in giving back to her community. We are going to bring her on now, and Liz is going to talk to us about, hi Liz, how are you?
Hi, great, how are you? Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Liz Cornish, and you're going to be talking today about the differences between dementia and just normal aging and how to spot it and what to do if you think somebody may believe they are experiencing signs of dementia.
Absolutely. So I get questions all the time. Oh, I'm forgetting names and I must have dementia. And that's definitely not the case. So with normal aging, you may forget somebody's name when you see them in the grocery store completely out of context. Or you may forget an appointment occasionally, but you remember that later, right? 3 hours later, you go, oh, that was Sally Smith, right? Someone with dementia forgets the appointments, forgets a phone number, and they're not going to remember it at all. It's just gone. They're not going to remember that they forgot it. So that's one of the most common signs that we see, is that memory loss that affects day-to-day life. So they're not going to remember.
Is that just seniors just having senior moments, or too much going on if we forget, like, that we were supposed to be somewhere at noon and now it's 1 and we remember? That's not dementia is what you're saying, but that's regular. Not dementia. That's regular.
Our brain, our brain processes slow down as we age. And we're not as quick, we're not as sharp as we were when we were 30. But when it's normal aging when you remember that you forgot.
Okay. I'm writing these things down, by the way. That's great. What are some other signs? And is it hard for somebody to tell themselves if they are aging normally or going through dementia? Is it better if a spouse or a friend is noticing for you? Like, how does it usually happen?
So usually people will know something is going awry, but they're really good at covering that. So many times what we find is people with dementia, when they look back, they've started having symptoms many years ago, but they acknowledged them 5 years later. Many times it's family members that are seeing things, friends that are noticing changes, and maybe even your doctor, if the doctor knows you well, that notices a change. The big issue with people with dementia is they may know it, but they don't have the insight to know how bad it truly is. So they may think, oh, I forget things every once in a while, but it's okay. And they don't have the insight to know that they're forgetting how to drive to their daughter's house or where she lives. So they don't have the insight for that.
So then if you're concerned if you're aging normally or if you have dementia, and you forget how to drive to your daughter's house, for instance, and you don't have the insight to know that you have dementia, what's going on? You just think you forgot and you just keep getting forgetful and you're not thinking it's anything more than that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because some of the symptoms are poor judgment. So poor problem solving. So they may think things are normal. One of the other symptoms is confusion of time and place. So that's something that it happens gradually, and they don't think that that's a problem. I'll give you an example. My mom had the beginning stages of dementia, and we were moving in with her, and we had the septic system assessed, and they said, oh my gosh, the water level is so high. Are you having any backed up drains or anything? We hadn't moved in yet. So I said, Mom, is there any drains that are slow to drain? And she says, oh, well, no, I only get about 4 inches of water in the tub when I shower. She was perfect. That wasn't an issue for her. It had happened over time, so it was perfectly fine, right? So that insight, that judgment was decreased. And yet she could still drive, and she was out and about.
Not putting two and two together that there could be an issue.
Right.
So things happening and they're not realizing that it's an issue that they should think about, look into, or realize. But since, like you say, you can function day to day, it's hard to, know. So is it dangerous? Is there a point that it's dangerous that somebody doesn't realize that they have dementia?
Oh, absolutely. So if they're not realizing, they may be forgetting to take their medications. They may be still cooking and they put something on the stove and forget about it. And then we have fires. I had a client who her reasoning and thought process was declined. She was living alone, but she had, her newspaper had gotten wet. And so she put it in the microwave to dry it. And had a fire. She had a fire.
Right? Oh, no.
So for her, that was, I'm going to dry it. I'm going to stick it in the microwave. So yes, it can become very dangerous. Confusion with time and place. People who know they have a doctor's appointment at 2:00 and they get up in the middle of the night thinking it's 2:00 in the afternoon and drive to the doctor's office. I had a gentleman who did that and was banging on the doctor's office, had no idea why the doctor was not there at 2 a.m. He didn't put two and two together. It's dark. There's no one here. I have the wrong time. No, he was there at the correct time and everybody else had the problem.
So how do you approach somebody when you notice something like this is going on? They might blow it off as a funny story, but how do you say, like, maybe you shouldn't be driving, maybe you shouldn't be cooking? Like, how do you approach a senior who's living on their own, who, seems to have it partially together? What do you do?
So it can be very difficult. Hopefully somebody has power of attorney and healthcare agent and all those documents in place, because along with showing these signs, what happens with the brain is that the parts of the brain that process critical thinking information and reasoning are usually affected first, so that you really can't reason with somebody and expect that they're going to critically think through a process and say, oh yeah, I guess that is dangerous, because they've lost that capability. So arguing with someone, trying to reason with somebody is usually futile. I recommend that if you're seeing these signs, that you make an appointment with a geriatric doctor or a gerontologist. You can get them to their primary care doctor. They can also do some preliminary testing, but getting someone to a geriatric specialist who deals with this all the time is the best idea. They can do in-depth screening and testing. And so many times it needs to come from an outside source rather than a family member, right? You're the daughter or you're the friend, and you're just, you don't know. But when it's the doctor saying it many times, or another professional saying it many times, that can change their attitude.
So Liz, is there a denial happening because their fear of losing out on some of their independence? Like if somebody goes to a doctor and sees that they have early signs of dementia, are they going to be afraid, like they're going to take my job away, my car away, my, ability to be free away? Is that a big reason why seniors don't go, or they don't have, or they're not even that cognitively able to determine that's their problem?
I think in the beginning, it's a denial. They know something's off, but they don't know what, right? And they don't want to lose their independence, and they don't want to be a burden to their children. That's a huge one. And so they're functioning according to them fine. They've had a couple falls, but they were able to get up. They had a little, they scorched the pan on the thing, but they scrubbed it clean. It's okay. They're managing most of the way, most of the time, okay. And so they don't want to burden their kids, and they don't want to lose their independence. So they tend to just kind of hide things and not be completely truthful. And the problem is that there's treatments, and there's so many different things that we can do to support people to keep them completely independent within their home, safe. And we can do that, but we can only do that if we know something's going on.
So to keep them independent and safe in their home, do you mean sending somebody to watch them a few hours a day, make sure they're taking the medicine, bathing, cooking for them?
It could be caregivers coming in to check on them. It could be maybe they need just an Alexa to remind them to take their medications, right? They're forgetting, but you can set up an Alexa-like device to say, Mom, it's 2:00, take your medications, right? If they only need that little bit of cueing, there's technology we can utilize. There's caregivers we could utilize. There's different systems plans that we can put in place so that they're successful.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I've even seen the medicine wheels where it only comes out at a certain time, and if you did take it, and it like rings, and there's really cool medicine things that I've seen.
Absolutely. And there's really cool AI now that you can set up in the home that isn't invasive. So it's not a camera, but it goes by sound, so that it can detect certain things and can detect a fall or a change in patterns, and can notify the caregiver, the adult child or a spouse or somebody. Along with, there's a really new one out there now that's that converts it's a camera, but it converts the person to a stick figure, so that you can have that in the bathroom to be able to monitor your loved one without truly invading their privacy.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's all kinds of different technology.
My mom had the, she was wearing the thing that you could touch, either around your neck or around your wrist. And she doesn't have dementia, but she is 86, and she fell outside in her pond trying to put on her waterfall. I showed up her house. She was all scraped up and bruised up. And I said, Mom, why didn't you tap, your wrist alert button? And she said, oh, I was good. I got up in like 10 minutes. And I thought, oh my God, like she could have been down there for the count, and she wasn't going to use it.
Right.
So
right.
I think the cameras are great to put in. And I love the idea that it's a stick figure, so they don't feel like you're watching them, just watching if they fall, they're sitting, they're in bed, whatever it is. That's great.
Right.
So what is that technology called?
That is called Augie.
Audi?
AUGI. AUGI.
That's great. So Liz, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do with New Seasons in Life? Because I'm assuming you help people, especially children of their loved ones, of parents, oftentimes set these things up and have help in the house when they're worried about their mom and dad and they don't live nearby. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
Thank you. So, New Season in Life, we help seniors and families kind of navigate through the process of aging. So, we will meet with families, find out who their parents are or who their loved ones are, what they enjoy doing, things they like, things they don't like, and we set up a plan. So, a lot of times we work with families. There may be some disagreement between the children, the adult children, of we want mom to stay home, we think mom should be in assisted living, and we can play that mediator. We meet with the parents. We can do our own kind of mini assessments and get an idea of who they are, where they are, and formulate a plan so that it's an outside consultant coming in. We also know many of the senior living communities. So when it isn't safe for them to be home, we can make referrals to the appropriate senior living communities that can allow them to thrive and be safe and live their best life. So I think the biggest thing is we set up a plan and we say, okay, I had a client last summer. There were 4 children and 2 wanted mom to stay home with this patchwork caregiving situation they had. 2 wanted her to move to assisted living. And so I came in and met with mom, and she had dementia and she was doing great in her home. But there was one caregiver who did the majority of everything and the rest were kind of patchwork. And so came out and said, okay, I think this is the plan. She stays home, but it all is dependent on this one caregiver. If this one caregiver changes, then she needs to move. And sure enough, 2 months later, the caregiver gave her notice. And the family was grateful because they had that plan in gear and they had already taken a look at different communities. So they knew where they wanted mom to move. So it was really seamless. And the caregiver ended up leaving. They moved mom actually before the caregiver left so that the caregiver helped transition her. And it was such a smooth transition. So that's really what we specialize in.
You know, Liz, I think it's really hard. It's much harder when there's lots of kids involved, right? They're all well-meaning, but everybody's a different opinion. What I'm finding with friends and their siblings and parents that are in their 80s and 90s is a lot of them just think their parents should be downsizing from their big house to a condo. And I, in particular, don't think that's the smartest move because it doesn't offer socialization, assisted living. It's just moving them to a smaller space that they're unfamiliar with. They could actually just live downstairs in their home, right? If that were the case. But it's kind of a struggle getting everybody on board, thinking that mom just needs a smaller place when, you know, that there's no help, there's no assistance, there's no socialization, I think is a huge thing.
It absolutely is. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we learned over COVID was the isolation that we put, especially seniors in, was so detrimental. We saw during COVID a 53% increase in dementia diagnosis.
Wow.
And that's huge. And I personally watched seniors who were thriving just shrink and wither away because they couldn't see family. They couldn't see the kids were staying away. The grandkids were staying away. They weren't social. And I've seen so many people move from isolation of their home. Their friend group has shrunk. And, as adult children, we think, oh, well, I'm visiting 3 times a week. Well, that's great. And we don't ever want to take away from that. But it's not a peer group. It's not the same. I always use the thing, if my whole friend group was my son's age, 25, that would be kind of weird. But we don't think, right? But we think that at 85, it's okay that their entire social life is their 60-year-old or 50-year-old child. And it's not, because I don't talk to my son the way I talk to my friends. And your mom or dad don't talk to you the way they talk to their friends either. And so they need that peer-to-peer, they need that same age group, they need that stimulation. And that is one of the biggest things that we've learned from COVID is that that isolation is so detrimental to brain health.
So you were saying that more cases of dementia, can dementia be brought on by isolation?
I think what we found is that it speeds it up. So, part of the way that we can decrease the risk of dementia is by staying socially active and staying physically active and keeping our brain active and eating healthy. And just those four things, when you isolate people, you decrease those things, right? Because our seniors that are living alone and that are isolated are not cooking the way they should be. They're not cooking well for themselves. They're not getting socialization. They're not continuing brain stimulation activities, and they're not exercising. So when you put them in that isolation, those risk factors go together. I mean, we have the studies to prove that by having all of those things put together, we can decrease the risk of dementia by up to 65%. So, when you take those things out of the equation, your risk factor goes up. And so maybe people that were functioning really independently, but had started to have dementia, when we isolated them, it really sped that up. It just was increased their dementia journey so quickly that they now needed assistance. So we had the diagnoses increase significantly throughout that time period.
And you know what? I have seen the opposite effect happen, where we have small homes in Shelton, just like home is just 2 homes for memory care, people with dementia, and we have had people come from larger homes that have been depressed, and they come to our home, and it's like they have reversed their dementia by 3 years. They come and they're walking, talking, they're dancing, they're doing puzzles, they're talking, they're communicating, because they weren't getting what they needed or the socialization or the one-on-one, and they were regressing a lot. And then they back to life, when you have the socialization, the one-on-one, your peer group, as you say, people to do things with, your music, your dancing. My mom had her aunt living with her when my aunt's husband died, and my aunt was in her 70s at the time. She lived to be 93 with my parents in her own apartment attached to their house, and all her peer group died, everybody. And my mother just didn't understand that. Why didn't she want to go with my mom to every play, every musical, every, dinner party? Now that my mom is 86, she's like, I now understand what was going on with my aunt, but you don't often, because like what you said, Liz, is kids think like, hey, I'm inviting you over to see the grandkids. Aren't you thrilled? Yeah, you should be thrilled that you're seeing the 3-year-olds when you want to be around 80-year-olds your own age,
Right.
But
right.
I get it. You need both. You need your family,
You
but
do.
you also need people your age that have your memories, that remember your things, that know what presidents were when you were a kid, that have your shared experiences. They're talking your language.
They are. They're talking your language. Absolutely. And you brought up a really good point. Socialization, just because you move to a community does not mean that you're going to get the socialization. You have to be moving to the right place. And that's what I find so important with what we do, is we really try to make sure it's the right place for each and individual family and senior, because every community is different. They have strengths, they have challenges, and every person is different. And so it has to be a really good match. And you can't always get that with just a tour.
Yeah. What I've seen a lot with my friends is that one parent was compensating for the other, and then the one parent dies and you didn't realize how bad your mom's dementia was because your father was compensating for her. And now it's like, oh my God, how did mom get dementia as soon as dad died, right? But one parent is just compensating. One parent's always doing the driving now, always doing the cooking, always doing the bills, always. So, it seems like it came on all of a sudden, but it was just, you didn't notice because there was somebody compensating for everything.
Right,
Do you see that
right.
often?
I see it all the time, all the
That's what
time.
I
And a
noticed.
lot of times, yeah, and a lot of times it's actually, sometimes it's the adult child making those compensations as well
Oh,
without truly even knowing it, right?
yeah.
Mom's having trouble cooking, so I'm going to cook. Well, that's great, but why is mom having trouble cooking? You know,
Yeah.
mom's now wearing sweatpants um, when she always was dressed because it's more comfortable. Well, usually that's not the case. If someone's
Mhm.
dressed a certain way their entire life and they change to sweatpants or something loose fitting that's easier, there's usually, if you dig a little bit deeper, there's usually some reason. They can't figure out how to button those buttons
Oh,
anymore. So
interesting.
right, right,
Interesting. So
yeah.
anytime you notice a change, not just what they don't want to drive to your house or now they're not cooking as much, they're just eating sandwiches or whatever and
Hmm.
wearing easy clothes because they can't figure out how to zipper button and maneuver. Wow,
Right.
that's
Hygiene.
interesting.
Hygiene is huge. I just had a client um who lived with his dad, and dad every took a shower once a week and went in on Mondays and showered. And all of a sudden the son realized he just didn't smell clean. So one Monday he goes in, he hears the shower going, and he knocks on the door and opens the door. Sure enough, dad's sitting on the toilet, just turned on the shower.
He
So every
forgot to
Monday,
go to the shower.
he didn't forget. He just he didn't feel safe. He didn't feel
Yeah.
comfortable, but he didn't want to bother his son. So,
Aw,
he wasn't making sound decisions, right? He was having
yeah.
dementia, and the son just assumed he heard the shower running, that he was showering. But again, this gentleman was just kind of hiding that from him. He didn't want to bother him. He didn't feel safe. He didn't feel comfortable. And so he just was pretending.
That's one thing I say to people when they're wondering how bad their parents' dementia is. My mother-in-law, for instance, in her bathrooms, in her bathtubs was storage. So
Mm,
she was not using them at all.
right,
And one sign of dementia is they oftentimes their hygiene goes out the window. Like they don't want to shower. They don't want water touching them. They don't
right.
want to brush teeth, So noticing if the shower's been used is a big to do, but that's a trickier situation if somebody's just putting the water on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And are they
I
misplacing things and not being able, or are you finding things in weird places? Um, keys in the freezer, things in the back, wallets in the back of the toilet. Um,
Oh God.
are things, Mom, I just bought you. I have a gentleman who his wife loved to garden, and he would, every summer he would get her clippers, and he would have to buy new clippers like 2 or 3 times in the summer. And he was like, I just thought I just bought you clippers. And as they were cleaning out the house to move it, he found this cabinet that no one ever used. There were like 21 pairs of clippers in there. she she just hid them, and then she didn't remember where she put them, and no one used them. So
Oh
she put them in this
my
really strange place. But yeah, if you're missing things, if things are going, you're having to buy
goodness.
things over and over, that's another sign.
So Liz, tips on how to get a parent to come to you and speak to you if they're reluctant and they think they're okay. Tips on getting them to, you know, relinquish their car and maybe come to your office with the family. How should you be talking to your parent to get them there or your loved one?
So a lot of times we say this is, um, she just has resources. I have resources. And many times, most times, I actually go to the client. So it's less threatening than having them come to me. I'll meet them. I'll meet them in their home. I'll meet them at a coffee shop. And we're going to look at resources that may help you with things through the community or ideas for the things in the community. Um, so if someone's resistant, usually they'll be a little bit open to that. And again, I'm very low key. So when I get there, it's a conversation. It's not I'm not in a white coat. I'm not a doctor. And so it's a conversation, and we just talk about things. And a lot of times just with conversation, I can get a really good idea of where they are by asking kind of key questions and what they may have trouble with. And say, hey, have you ever thought of this? Or, I've got a really cool thing that can help you remember to take your medications. This is really neat. And so many times the kids, it's about money, especially our older generation. Even if they have it, they don't want to spend it. They want to keep it for their kids. And so, the kids will say, sometimes the kids will say, well, just tell her it's a free service. And the kids will take it. Right. So, sometimes those what we call kind of therapeutic lies, those therapeutic living, are okay with someone, especially if they have dementia and they can't process things critically. So a lot of times if they're married, we're doing it for the spouse. Well, this isn't for you. This is for the spouse. The husband is needing, dad's needing some extra care and he could use the help, mom. And so they'll accept that because it's not for them. So there are different ways that we can approach it and move forward with that.
What about the car?
Car is difficult. So, unfortunately, sometimes it's after they've had a couple fender benders. If you've noticed scratches or the mirror, having issues with that. A lot of times, if you have a relationship with their primary care physician, we can get the doctor to be the bad guy because that's okay. I'd rather have an outside professional be the bad guy than the child be the bad
guy. That's
guy.
a great idea.
Right. So, having a conversation before the doctor's visit with the doctor, or sending a note to the doctor before, hey, I'm very concerned about mom's driving. She's had many close calls, or she's had, some fender benders. I don't want to be the one. Can you be the one to tell her she should no longer be driving?
That's a great idea, Liz. So always making somebody else the bad guy, just so you can retain your relationship with your parent, loved one, husband,
Absolutely.
wife. So
absolutely.
Telling the doctor, like, my mom's been in lots of car accidents, and, can you give her some test or do something so she knows she can't drive anymore? You're the one that will say it. Or going to you and having you say, we have some free services for you. We have volunteers who will come in and help you with your medication and everything. So they don't think they're spending, the $2 million they have in the bank that they don't want to spend because they're leaving it with their kids.
Exactly.
Or I think so many people are sitting on their biggest asset. They might not have any money, but their Social Security, but they're sitting on a house that is, worth, a lot of $500,000 and up. And so selling that really can get them a lot of services.
Absolutely. For a long time.
But
yes.
Thank you, Liz. You have been so informative. And just to recap, because you've taught me a lot, because I actually have friends that are kind of a little bit on the verge of, do they have dementia, or is it just aging? And we all start to worry when we're getting older here, like, is this normal? I'm forgetting people's faces or forgetting, appointments. Is that normal? So you've answered a lot of the questions on when is it dementia? When is it normal aging? And if I could just recap for a minute, it's like you were saying, normal aging is when you remember that you forgot. But in dementia, you remember that you forgot. You just forget everything, and it's not coming back to you later on. So it's normal to forget maybe where you put your keys, but if you forget that you even had keys, that could be dementia.
Absolutely.
So I get the difference, and the poor judgment, and being safe is very important, and making other people, the kind of scapegoat when you want to tell your loved one what's changes are happening that you may not, want to be the person letting them know. That. That's awesome. Do you have any final words that you'd like to tell everyone?
Again, I think that seeking guidance, don't go it alone. So many times people think they're the only ones going through this. And whether it's just aging, whether it's dementia, you're not alone, and there are people that are going through it, and there are professionals to help guide you through this, so that you don't spend time, money, and just wasted energy, kind of trying to reinvent the wheel. Our services are free to our clients for our senior living communities, so it's no cost, and we know the communities and can give people insight and give people resources. I have a huge resource list that I can provide, from anything from a handyman to counseling to support groups. So there's resources out there for people, and it's just so important not to go it alone. Get help.
That is great information too, because I think one of my fiance, he goes to all his friends' parents' houses. Like, he grew up nearby where we live now, and the parents, they're still there. They're all like 90 years old, but the kids live nowhere near here. And he'll go there every 2 months and just change people's light bulbs and do small repairs for them, because they could be sitting in the dark, not being able to change a light bulb, and having a handyman that they could trust and come into their house, like even monthly, to do simple things like changing a light bulb or simple thing, because they're just sitting, things are going awry and they can't fix them. They don't know who to call. So just knowing who to call. So that's a great service, Liz. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you over Zoom here. And new season in life, if you're interested in Liz Cornish and her services, it's 860-841-9504, 860-841-9504. And you service what area in Connecticut?
All of Connecticut.
Okay. All of Connecticut. Perfect.
All of Connecticut.
I hope to meet you in person one day.
Absolutely. Very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll talk again.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you so much, Liz. That was, I learned a lot. I really did. I know a lot about dementia, but the signs of going into dementia, different story. So this will be very beneficial. And I hope that you got a lot of benefit out of it. Thank you so much, Liz. And thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Seniors, Memory Care Issues, Alzheimer's, Dementia, and Parkinson's. Till next time.